Well, welcome everybody. This is ClarkCountyToday.com, and if you can believe it, the election is coming up just around the corner. At this point, we're less than 2 weeks away by the time that you're seeing this video. So we wanted to take a little bit of time to sit down with some of the candidates for some of the more important races that are on the ballot this November. One of those, of course, is Clark County Chair. There will be a new Clark County Chair this year, as Mark Bolts didn't win out in the primary. So we're going to sit down with both of the candidates. Right now we're sitting down with Eileen Quiring, who is the current District 4 councilor. Eileen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, let's talk a little bit about your background. I know that you grew up in Clark County. You spent some time in North Carolina and Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about what you did there and what brought you back to the area.
Okay. Well, as you say, I spent many of my growing up years here in Clark County, and I love Clark County, but I had the opportunity to be in other places. So I lived in Oregon for some time, and then in 1983, my husband was transferred to North Carolina, so we got to see the South. It's a beautiful place. I wasn't quite prepared. I didn't know, how was I going to like that? And Charlotte is where we lived, and Charlotte is called the City of Trees. And so it was just beautiful to be there. And I liked it a lot, but we were transferred back, and we returned back to Oregon. And then in 2009, because my family, my daughter and grandson live here, and my sister and her family live here in Clark County, and I thought it was time to come home.
I know you spent some time in the Oregon Legislature. I want to get back to talking a little bit about that when we get to the discussion about the I-5 bridge, because obviously that plays a little bit into it. But as folks remember, the Home Rule Charter now means that we have 5 council members.
Yes.
The chair is the at-large, so everybody in the county votes for the chair. You've been District 4 councilor for 2 years now, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So talk a little bit about, in your mind, what's the main difference between one of the district councilors and the chair, and how will you take what you've done in District 4 and translate that into being the chair?
Okay. Well, the unique thing about the chair is the person that actually is the spokesperson for the council. When the council makes a decision or any kind of a decision that they make all together, the chair is the one that speaks for them. The other thing is the chair is the spokesperson, for instance, who would speak to the governor or the legislature or even on federal issues. So, and it is the chair who articulates maybe what some of the policy directions are that the council wants to go. So basically the chair does speak for the council. The other thing that the chair does is the chair decides how constituent responses for the councilors are going to be handled. So that's very important too, because that portion of the responsibility, I think, really speaks to the fact that we are representatives. And I would say, we all, the others represent the various districts within the county, but I would say that once we make a decision, it affects the entire county. So I think most of the councilors really think countywide, even though they specifically represent a particular district. And I would say, when there are things going on in your district, usually you hear from your constituents, whether it's about surface mining or about a road or an intersection that needs to be improved, those kinds of things. You will hear from your constituents in your district, I think, more often, and take it maybe more seriously or careful. Seriously isn't the word, but you would be more responsive maybe to people in your district just because that is the area that you represent.
Now, I know Mark has made some comments, and in the primary he ran as unaffiliated.
Yes.
It seems like he sort of has a mindset of that chair position needs to be all things to all people and not take a side. You historically have been very conservative in most of your viewpoints. How can you take that conservative viewpoint into the chair position and still work well with the other councilors? It potentially could be shifting more to the left, at least in one district.
Yeah, that's very, it's true that there may be a shift in the council. I don't know that I agree that we have to be all things to all people. I don't actually think anybody can be all things to all people. So What I would have to do is, though, in the political realm, I don't care, actually in the business realm as well, one has to build bridges, and particularly in the political realm. And having served just the 2 years on this council, but otherwise in other political elected offices, you realize that you have to build bridges. You don't know when your colleague is going to be on the same page as you, and you need to work with them. You need to listen to them even when you disagree, because you have to take all sides of a particular issue and then make your determination. So I will maintain my principles, and hopefully as the chair, I can help to bring along some of the councilors to my way of thinking, or I would be able to persuade them perhaps.
Let's talk a little bit about the budget. Your opponent, Eric Holt, has made a comment that the county is $20 million in the hole, I believe he said. You recently, with a lone no vote on raising the property tax of the county for a while, has declined to take the state, not required, the state allowed 1% increase in property taxes. Let me ask you, if that topic comes up again, given, and I know you want to address a little bit of the budgetary issues, but given the fact that the county is facing some revenue issues, would you continue to vote no on that? And if so, how else would you address those budgetary issues?
Okay, so first of all, let me address the $20 million in the hole. We are not $20 million in the hole. If you take every single, maybe each thing that the departments are asking for, you might be able to come up with that sort of a figure, but that's not exactly where we are. We have an increased revenue actually by 10%, at least 10%, from our sales tax revenues. I believe that my no vote on taxes came about, first of all, by the fact that we knew what the legislature was going to do. The assessor came and told us there's going to be a big hit on property taxes, so to watch it. We had a $23 million balance when that tax was, before that tax was implemented or voted on. And so I voted no because I knew the people were going to be receiving an additional hit to their property taxes. And believe me, I have heard from people about how they are hurting from that. Whether you're retired or whether you're a single person or just plain homeowner that is having to pay a huge amount in additionally for sales tax, or excuse me, for property tax. So I probably will vote no. I think that we should live within our means. And so what I would do to look for ways of doing that, I would require, first of all, the various departments to basically prioritize what they need. Granted, right now, we do have some things, especially with technology, where some of our departments really need to get a little bit more technologically up to speed. And so those are some of the larger expenditures that we do need to spend so that we can serve our constituents well. There are other things. Having been in the public sector before, I've actually been in the, well, I won't call it the belly of the beast, but I've been in on discussions of the budget where, you know, you kind of massage the numbers and you say, well, we have this FTE that we've got that's vacant, but we need to keep those funds just in case we hire. Even if we're not planning on doing it, or, you know, so I know there are ways to manipulate, and I'm not saying that everybody does, but I do think that we tend to all want to keep what we have so that we have a little bit easier job making ends meet. But I just think that we have to work together to try to create a better process so that we know where every tax dollar is going. This is other people's money, and we have to be guardians of other people's money when it comes in. And of course, we want to give good services, but we do have to watch that. One thing that I would say is I have a little story that when I worked, this was quite a few years ago, but when I worked at Clark County in the assessor's office, I was an appraiser there. I remember coming in one day and going to the restroom, and outside the restroom was paper products piled from floor to ceiling all over the place. And I thought, well, I wonder, are they cleaning out a closet or something? And so I went and asked somebody, I said, are they changing the closet around or something? No, the answer was it was the end of the budget year and they had to use those funds or they wouldn't get them again. And it's that kind of manipulation that we should, we should reward people who save money in their departments by allowing them to have, for instance, if they need technological updates. If they've saved money somewhere else, they should be rewarded with being able to make the changes that are necessary for them.
Let's move on to transportation. This has become a very hot button issue again. Yeah. I think it's a hot button issue for any of the thousands who have to drive to Portland and back.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, the conversation over the I-5 bridge project has come up again. The council has also passed its own resolution, different in some ways than some of the resolutions we've seen from RTC and from the city of Vancouver and CTRAN. Let me just kind of get your thoughts on the efforts to revive the I-5 bridge project, first of all.
Okay. I would say I reluctantly voted for that resolution, on one hand because of having attended a transportation forum where I learned about the amount of congestion, and that we are the 47th in the world. This spot is the 47th in the world most congested area. So people have answered me, well, this isn't going to address congestion, and because of the Rose Quarter. And that is probably true, that it won't address as much congestion, but if we create a throughway for multimodal transportation, what the resolution that we agreed to was bus rapid transit. We've already spent money for the infrastructure for bus rapid transit, and we should use buses rather than light rail. It's a whole lot less expensive way, and furthermore, light rail normally doesn't have that many new riders. Most of the people that are on light rail take public transportation already. They're already riding on a bus. So buses are much easier to work with, even when you have population changes. That doesn't necessarily apply to the bridge, because the bridge is only one way across. But we stated in that resolution that we wanted bus rapid transit, i.e. no light rail. And I added several several amendments to that resolution that were not accepted. I don't want tolls on the bridge. I think that this is an interstate highway. We don't have other tolls further up on the interstate with improvements. And so the federal government really should help us with this interstate and not charge tolls. And we need more capacity on this bridge, in addition to this throughway. Now, I had suggested that we also allow HOV, cars with more than one driver in it to be in that throughway as well. But I learned after having the policy person look it up that the federal government will not fund that. You can't have cars in a transit lane.
Guideway.
Yeah. So
you mentioned a little bit the federal funding. I know the council is considering a resolution to urge the federal government to provide sufficient funding so that tolling isn't necessary.
Not used. Yes.
Should the current administration not come through with that, and the only way to get this project done is to toll it, would you support that in that particular case? And if so, how would you want to see that implemented?
Well, I really do not support tolls on this bridge. And I know that that is a mechanism to fund transportation right now because of the expense of it. But we have 72,000 people crossing and commuting to the other side, to the other side of the river for their jobs, which means they pay Oregon income tax. And we also have freight and other goods and services that need to go on this area too. So I am not in favor of tolls. I don't know how I personally will be able to stop it, but I will say I am against the idea of tolls. We had a toll on the bridge. People remember that. People my age would remember what our toll on that I-5 bridge was. It was 20 cents. 20 cents, and I believe it was 20 cents maybe even just one way. But even if it wasn't, that's 40 cents to go back and forth. That's not what this toll would be. I mean, it's going to be in the dollars, and I haven't made a study of what it might be, but I have heard from previous conversations that, you know, I doubt it's going to be anything below a couple dollars. So even that, every day, if you're commuting for your job and also paying 9 or 10% income tax, it just is not fair to Southwest Washington people.
The governor, the incumbent governor of Oregon, obviously there's an election going on there, during a debate recently made the comment that light rail, in her view, would be a prerequisite to any bridge project. Now, we know that Washington and Oregon need to both be at the table to get this done. If Kate Brown wins re-election, and the only way to get Oregon to the table is to include light rail on that bridge, is that something that, I mean, grudgingly, would you at that point?
No, I think what I would do at that point is say we need another bridge, period. For, you know, if you are going to insist on this, the subsidies that will happen after that light rail is built, it's not only costly to build, it is costly to subsidize every one of those riders. So, and it's not just maintenance, it is the riders, every single ride. Because I went through this argument on the Oregon side regarding light rail. I was not in favor of light rail then, and people might think that's antiquated, but I think, you know, they pulled up trolley tracks in downtown Portland before they put light rail tracks in. So it is, in my view, a 19th century solution for a 20th century problem. And I think that if that's going to be the insistence of Oregon, we just have to say no and go to another bridge, whether it's 192nd or on the west side. I understand there are some people in Oregon really working hard to get a west side bridge passed, and if we can join hands with them and try to get that done, that would be better. It's a boondoggle to have light rail. We do not need it. You know, people talk about large cities that have light rail and subways and all these things that are just so wonderful. The problem is we are not a huge metropolis like most of those cities. We're a smaller area than what can be best served by train or light rail or subway. We can use buses and we can change routes when populations change. So I would say no. We have to find a different way.
This is the part where I wanted to bring up a little bit of your time in the Oregon Legislature, because you mentioned it there a little bit.
Yes.
Do you feel like that gives you a bit of an advantage? I don't know how many people are still there that you knew
There
and worked with.
There actually are some people there. Peter Courtney was there, who's president of the Senate.
Peter Courtney's always been there, right?
Yes, right. But he's still there. I might be able to, Kate Brown. I served with Kate Brown when she was a senator, and I was in the Senate. So, it's very possible that Kate Brown won't win the election, and I'm just hoping that that's not going to be criteria for us to move forward with that bridge. But yes, I do think, and I was on the Value Pricing Advisory Committee for the other side, and by the way, I voted against those tolls too, but there were other county commissioners. Roy Rogers is one from Washington County, and he was there, and we know each other from past years too. So I think that we can work together to try to find a solution, a bi-state solution for getting across that Columbia River.
So let's go back to issues within the county. I know affordable housing, homelessness, job growth. Those are three major issues I'm sure you've heard a lot about from people that you've talked to. The Growth Management Act is something that the county is still wrestling with a little bit. There's been a lot of debate over what's been called smart growth, this infill type of development versus increasing private property rights in order to increase the availability of buildable rural lots in the comprehensive growth plan. Which of those methods would you prefer?
I think that this so-called smart growth really is pushing everybody all into an urban area. And while I don't want huge sprawl so that we go from one city to the next city, just adjoining one another, I do believe that as we do the comprehensive plan, we need to use the right numbers to do that. One of the things we need to do is use correct population numbers so that we are correctly forecasting how we are going to grow. The other thing that we need to do is, and this is in the weeds a little bit, but we have this vacant buildable land equation. If that is not completed properly, then exponentially down the road, all those numbers are all very wrong. So there are many pieces of land that they're saying that we have that can be built on that really are not suitable. They're either not suitable for building or they already have something on them and nobody is going to build on them. I think that we have to carefully look at expanding the urban growth boundary in order to meet some of to make sure that our housing is affordable, because a lot of what is causing the unaffordability of houses, in addition to the many fees that are paid when a builder builds a house, is this false scarcity. I say false scarcity because when you pretend there isn't land to build on because you haven't moved the urban growth boundary, that's not real. It's just a line in the sand, so to speak. So I do think that we have to do that carefully. There are a couple of things that we did to address some aging in place things and affordability of homes. For instance, cottage homes. We had a session with the Council on Aging and talking about moving from two-story homes to one-story smaller homes. So we created and had the codes created for cottage homes where you have smaller lots with some open area, and there are some around the state that are very nice, actually around the United States too. And then the other thing that we did is we created ADUs, accessory dwelling units. The unfortunate thing is our urban growth boundary, our GMA will not allow for an accessory dwelling unit in rural areas unless it is connected to a wall, not a walkway, a wall, because of creating more density in the rural areas. And when you think about a 5-acre parcel and you want to put even if it's your 26-year-old kid who's still in college or something, living out in an ADU, or your parents, living out in an ADU, you have to have it on another wall, when I think that you could, there's plenty of space to allow for it.
Well, it is interesting, if you drive around, you'll see RVs and stuff parked at a lot of
Yes.
places. People have taken to parking those and renting them out or having a relative stay in them. So people are finding ways.
They are.
Sort of in that same vein, I know there's been some complaints about the county's building permit process. A lot of folks saying it needs to be streamlined. Do you agree with those complaints, and how would you address those issues?
I do agree that it has been an arduous process, and in fact, my first year that I was in office, and I think it's gotten better, and I do think we are improving it, because the first year in office, it was probably the most frequent complaint that I got was dealing with the permitting and development. So We have a new development director. I believe that he is doing a very good job, and we had a consultant come and tell us where we were falling down, and he is addressing that, and I do believe that we are streamlining it. We continue to work on it and will continue to work on it. This last week, on Tuesday, I believe it was, there was a luncheon that Columbia River Economic Development had, and there was a forum, kind of a forum up there that talked about it. It was defining Clark County as place, as our place. And one of the developers mentioned that, it takes 2 years to go from a drawing to actually start building. And he said it would be really good if these various planning departments and permitting departments could move faster on that, maybe make a 4-month window, because a lot of their risk is there financial risk. And he had a very good point, because think about what's happened in the last 2 years or 3 years even, about what the market does. You don't know what the market is going to do in the next 2 years. So I think it's incumbent on us to really work with the people that are taking risks to make Clark County a really great place to live and be. And this isn't just housing. This is businesses, et cetera, that that I'm talking about, and that this developer happens to deal with. And I think that we should, our developers have a lot of risk on the line when they come to us. And I think that has to be in the back of the mind of the people that are helping with these various permitting things that we go through. I was one of the things, I just say this, one of the suggestions has been that if there is a really good engineer and they are known to bring forward very good plans, that an engineering stamp might be enough. Now, this would not be on a really complicated thing, but that would also help to move the process so that we're not going through it over and over again.
We had a reader that suggested a question about the Livingston Quarry. I know that this obviously dates back to your time before the council, but it has been something that has been an issue for a while about the livability concerns of neighbors up there. He had mentioned that you were at a Propstal neighborhood meeting in May, and that you would look into it, and he says nothing has happened. He wanted to know, was there any update on that? And then he had a question about a campaign donation from Topani Underground up there that you accepted, and concerns that maybe that might be influencing your...
Well, first of all, we have the PDC, the Public Disclosure Commission, in order to show people that they can go and they can find out who gives to us. But Tapani actually does many, many, many more things than rock. They're Tapani Underground, and you see their signs all over in development. So they do many more things than rock, and no, that doesn't influence me. I think that when people give to your campaign, they just have sort of the same philosophy, I would say. As far as Livingston Quarry, there have been issues with the number of trucks and the number of loads, and there are differences of opinion between the Tower Rock that is leasing from the county. There are actually 2 sites up there, which complicates it, because we serve as a regulatory agent and a leaseor. So on these 2 different sites, DNR owns one and one is privately owned. And we have a conditional use permit on the one, and DNR owns one, which we lease to Tapani, or to Tower Rock is what it is. So there are issues. We are trying to address it. It is very complicated, and it's not that we're not doing anything. We are looking at various ways to address how to make sure that the loads that are coming out, there are a certain number of loads and a certain peak times that you can have more loads, but the people that are leasing it say, well, we don't work on Sunday, and so that makes the clock go soon, that stops the clock on Sunday. So you can begin your peaks again. We have tried to address the speed. We have, and I know the Camas School District has maybe changed some bus stops for the children. We just have to make it safe. We're all concerned about that safety, and we are addressing it. I will tell you, we are addressing it.
All right. Let me ask you then, if you're elected as county chair, it's obviously going to be because a majority of the voters decided that they wanted you to be the county chair, or at least the number of people who voted, right? So when it comes to your view on government, I'm curious, is the will of the majority always the driving factor behind a decision? Or is there a time or a subject where you would do something because you believed in it, even if it were unpopular with the majority?
Okay, here is my philosophy on that. First of all, we have a representative form of government, so I consider myself a representative of the people. Often what you think is a majority is only a loud minority. But when I run for office, whenever I have run for office, I have tried to be as honest as I can be about where I stand on specific or particular issues. And there are certain principles that I have that will not change. I will work cooperatively with anybody and collaboratively with anybody on most everything. But there are going to be some principles that I will not budge on. And I try to make that clear to people when I'm running for office so that they know, okay, I may not agree with her on this, but I agree with her on all these other things. And if you've told the truth about where you stand on certain things and are still elected, I just believe that you should keep going with the way that you have stated that you would represent people. So, like I say, sometimes what seems to be a very loud majority simply isn't. It's a loud minority. And but you have to look at everything carefully. Every decision that you make, you have to look and say, how will this affect the people that I represent? Will it, in the long run, what are the consequences? Are there some unforeseen consequences? And when that happens, you have to look back and maybe go back and try to change it. If something is a negative consequence after it has passed, I think you have to look at it again and bring it back for discussion. So it really, in some ways, it's a fine line, but I always find that if you tell the truth, when you're running for office, you tell where you stand on particular issues, that you're safe if you do get elected, to be able to continue to do that.
We're almost near the end. I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about your vision for Clark County, say 10, 20 years out. What do you see the county becoming?
Okay. One of the things that I have said and I see is Clark County is such a beautiful and wonderful place. We're between Seattle and Portland. Of course, Portland is closer, but we're between those two metropolitan areas. And I think we have a unique place here. And I would like to see, over time, Clark County having its own real identity and its own economic engine, so that not so many people have to go to Portland, for instance, to work, to find a job that pays well. And so I would like to work as closely as I can, for instance, with Columbia River Economic Development Council, so that we can bring the kinds of jobs that we want here, clean, good, and well-paying jobs for our people right here in Clark County. I also think that we have to plan carefully and plan ahead of time so that we're not always trying to catch up, for instance, with transportation, with some of the roads, etc. Regardless of what the cost is, we need to put these things on the map so that in the future we know that these things are coming. And now we have an opportunity. For instance, the Discovery Corridor up I-5 up near Ridgefield. That is a premium area that can really thrive and be a wonderful place for us to grow, in a sense. And so I look forward to Clark County actually becoming its own identity, have its own economic engine, and really be a place where people want to come to live and work.
And it's a constant frustration. I was reading an article, I can't remember what it was about the other day, but they listed Vancouver as a suburb of Portland. And I know when I talk to Mayor McInerney-Ogle, that's always a major frustration with her.
Yes.
Are there any big issues that the county is facing that we haven't addressed that you want to talk about? Or?
Well, I would just say that one of the things that we are looking at, actually an advisory committee, is looking at the replacement of a jail or the possibility of the replacement of the jail. We have an old jail that was built in the early to mid 80s, and it's very overcrowded. So I believe they're going to be coming with some sort of a decision and recommendation to the council in around April. And we want to do all we can to keep our corrections officers safe and those that are incarcerated for a short time in Clark County. And of course, we'd like to divert as many away from jail as we possibly can. But I see that as something that will, I believe, eventually the council will determine after we are advised by this advisory group that is very diverse. I mean, we've gotten a lot of individuals to be on that and really look closely at it. But we will eventually decide, and then what we decide we would put to the voters of Clark County to find out exactly what they would approve of. I believe that I have the leadership experience to become Clark County's chair, and so I would just ask for your vote. Thank you.
Eileen Quiring, Council Chair candidate, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.